got to come clean that I killed those 7 men in first-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. Serial killer.
Aileen Carol Pittman would leave a trail of death along Florida's back roads and highways between December of 1989 and September of 1990. But who was Aileen Carol Pittman? Aileen Carol Pittman would become Aileen Lee Wuornos when she turned 4 years old and was adopted by her maternal grandparents. You see, Aileen Wuornos was born as Aileen Carol Pittman near Rochester, Michigan on February 29, 1956. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was only 14 years old when she married Aileen's father, a then 18-year-old Leo Dale Pittman. Aileen's older brother, Keith, was born on March 14, 1955. After less than 2 years of marriage and a couple months before Aileen was born, Diane divorced Leo as he had been charged with kidnapping and sexually assaulting a 7-year-old girl and had been sent off to prison. Aileen never had the chance to meet her father, as he was incarcerated at the time of her birth and eventually hanged himself in prison. Aileen's father was diagnosed with schizophrenia, among other things, and hanged himself when Aileen had just turned 13 years old.
To me, this world is nothing but evil, and all of us are full of evil one way or another.
Now, prior to all of this, right before Aileen had turned 4 years old, her mother Diane abandoned her and her older brother Keith with Diane's parents, Laura and Britta Wuornos. In March of 1960, Laurie and Britta Wuornos legally adopted Keith and Aileen, and legally changing their last names from Pittman to Wuornos. Now, Laurie and Britta Wuornos were known to be alcoholics, and Britta was said to have often beat Aileen up until the age of almost 15 when he finally threw her out of the house. While Aileen was 11 years old, she would get engaged in sexual favors with schoolmates in exchange for money, beer, and cigarettes. Aileen would also engage in sexual activities with her brother, and the two of them would have an incestuous relationship at times. Later in life, Aileen had stated on numerous occasions that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted her and beat her, and that her grandfather would often force her to strip naked prior to beating her. At the age of 14, Aileen would become pregnant by a friend of her grandfather who she claims had forced himself upon her. 9 months later, Aileen gave birth to a baby boy while staying in a home for unwed mothers in March of 1971. The baby boy was quickly placed for adoption, and Aileen never saw him again. Soon after, Aileen's grandmother died of liver failure, and then at the age of almost 15, her grandfather Britta threw her out of the house. Aileen then began to support herself through prostitution and petty thefts while living in the woods near her old home. Sometimes her brother Keith would sneak her into the house so that she could clean up and have a decent meal. Other times, Aileen would spend days out in the woods without having a proper shower or clean clothes to wear.
Why you people think I should sit here and cry my brains out?
In May of 1974, Aileen had started hitchhiking across the country. She was arrested in Colorado for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a pistol out of a moving vehicle. Aileen had then skipped her court date and was later charged with failure to appear. Aileen had spent a short amount of time in jail for this arrest. In 1976, soon after Aileen turned 20, she had hitchhiked to Florida where she had met then 69-year-old Louis Fell. Louis Fell was a yacht owner and also a yacht club president. Aileen and Louis fell in love and quickly married within a few weeks of meeting each other. However, Aileen could not resist getting into trouble and continually involved herself by confronting other patrons at a local bar and ended up going to jail for a short time for another assault. Aileen then started to abuse Louis Fell, and the relationship quickly began to fall apart. At one point, Aileen hit Louis with his own cane, causing him to get stitches on his head. Louis Fell then filed for a restraining order against her, and within weeks their marriage was annulled.
I have to come clean and cleanse my spirit in the name of Jesus Christ.
Now in July of 1976, Aileen returned to Michigan and once again was arrested at a local club in Mansalona, where she was charged with assault and disturbing the peace, as she had thrown a cue ball at a bartender and struck him in the head. On July 17th, Aileen's brother Keith died of a type of throat cancer. However, Aileen would receive a $10,000 life policy payment from Keith's life insurance. Aileen then went on to use the money to pay for her fines from her previous arrest and squandered the rest of the money buying jewelry, clothing, and a new car, which she had soon wrecked shortly after. Aileen had to use the last of the insurance money to pay a fine from a drunk driving charge after wrecking her new car. Now, between the ages of 14 and 22, Aileen had attempted suicide 6 times. At the age of 22, her last attempt at suicide was by shooting herself in her stomach. Aileen then left Michigan and headed down towards the Edgewater area of Florida. In May of 1981, Aileen was arrested in Edgewater, Florida for armed robbery of a convenience store clerk where she had stolen $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes at gunpoint. She was then sentenced to 1 year in prison for the armed robbery charge and released in May of 1982. Then, a couple months later in June, she was arrested again for trying to cash forged checks at a bank located in Key West, Florida. On November 30th of 1985, Aileen was named as a suspect in a robbery that involved a handgun and ammunition in Pasco County area. There was not sufficient evidence to convict her, so she was set free. Now, in January of 1986, Aileen was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, and a few other charges for giving false information and identification. She had tried to use her aunt's ID, but the police were not fooled by her attempts. During the arrest, police had found a handgun and ammunition in the glove box of the car. Once again, she was arrested in June of the same year for threatening a male companion in his car at gunpoint and trying to rob him of $200. Police once again found ammunition in Aileen's pockets and a small caliber pistol hidden underneath the passenger seat. However, due to lack of evidence and the victim not pressing charges, police released Aileen at the scene. At this point in her life, Aileen had met Tyra Moore that same year, and it was love at first sight for the both of them. Tyra Moore was a hotel maid, and they had met in Daytona Beach in a bar named the Zodiac. They moved in together and mainly lived off of the money that Aileen made by prostituting. However, in July of 1987, they would both be accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. Then, in March of '88, Aileen would accuse a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She accused the driver of pushing her off the bus after confrontation between the two of them. Tyra Moore was Aileen's witness, but charges were soon dropped in the case. Now, in the next 12-month period, Aileen would rob and murder 7 men. November 1989, Richard Mallory. 2 days after his murder, a Volusia County deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned vehicle. On December 13th, his body was found several miles away in a wooded area. He had been shot several times, and 2 bullets to the left lung were found to have been the cause of his death. May 1990, David Spears. He was declared missing as of May 19, 1990. However, on June 1, 1990, his naked body was found along U.S. Route 19 in Citrus County, Florida. He had been shot 6 times with a .22 caliber pistol. May 1990, Charles Carskad. On June 6, 1990, his body was found in Pasco County. He had been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber pistol. The body had been wrapped in an electric blanket and was badly decomposing when found. Witnesses in the area saw Wuornos in possession of Carskadon's car, and Wuornos also had found a gun identified as belonging to Carskadon. July 1990, Peter Seams. Seams had left Jupiter, Florida for Arkansas. On July 4th, 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' palm print was found on the interior door handle. Peter's body was never found. July of 1990, Troy Burgess. On August 4th, 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. He had been fatally shot twice with a .22 caliber pistol. September of 1990, Charles Humphreys. His body was found in Marion County also. He was fully clothed and had been shot 7 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Suwannee County, where police obtained more prints. November 1990 was Wuornos' last victim, Walter Antonio. Antonio's nearly naked body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found in Brevard County. Now, if we go back to July of 1990, Aileen and Tyra had abandoned Peter Sims' car after being involved in an accident. A witness to the accident gave police a description of Aileen and Tyra, resulting in a campaign to locate and apprehend them. Police also found some of Aileen's victims' items in local pawn shops, along with Aileen's prints on receipts that had matched the print left in Sims' car. Police were able to match the print to Wuornos' prints using their database through Aileen's past arrests. January 9, 1991, Aileen Wuornos was arrested on outstanding warrants at the Last Stand Bar in Volusia County, Florida. Police caught Tyra Moore the following day in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Moore returned to Florida with police, where she was placed in a motel and offered immunity from prosecution if she would cooperate with the police and obtain a confession from Aileen. Tyra made numerous phone calls to Wuornos, pleading for her help in clearing her name. 3 days later, on January 16, 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed the men had sexually assaulted her and she killed them in self-defense. On January 14, 1992, Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally inadmissible in criminal trials, under Florida's Williams rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to the other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. On January 27, 1992, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder with the help from Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Wuornos was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorders. 4 days later, Aileen Wuornos was sentenced to death.
I sentence you to death for the murder of Charles Humphreys. Case number 91-112, Citrus County case number. I sentence you to death for the murder of...
On March 31, 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burgess, and David Andrew Spears because she wanted to get right with God.
I'll be up in heaven while y'all rotting in hell.
On May 15, 1992, Wuornos was given 3 more death sentences. In June 92, Wuornos pled guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Carskadden. In November 92, she received her 5th death sentence. In February 1993, Wuornos pled guilty to the murder of Walter Gino Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Abram Seams, as his body had not been found. In all, Wuornos received 6 death sentences in total. Wuornos would go on to tell several inconsistent stories about the killings.
And he lifts up my legs and he puts what turns out to be rubbing alcohol in the Visine bottle, and he sticks some up my rectum area.
She claimed initially that all 7 men had sexually assaulted her while she was working as a prostitute. However, later she recanted the claim of self-defense and stating that robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the main reason for the murders.
Yeah, I'm just sitting around thinking how I can drum up a story.
Aileen Wuornos' execution by lethal injection took place on October 9, 2002. She declined her last meal and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, "Yes, I would just like to say that I'm sailing with the Rock."
Nick, this is the last time I'm going to say it. You have to kill Aileen Wuornos because she'll kill again.
Aileen Wuornos died at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. She was the 2nd woman in Florida and the 10th woman in the United States to be executed since the 1976 Supreme Court's decision to restore capital punishment.